Rudy Giuliani's law license is suspended in Washington, D.C. That after the president's former personal lawyer saw his license suspended in New York, all for pushing the big lie of non-existent election fraud.
They only submitted 8,021 ballots from dead people, mail-in ballots for dead people. It's probably easier for dead people to submit mail-in ballots than it is to vote in person.
We cannot allow these crooks, because that's what they are, to steal an election from the American people.
Let's have trial by combat.
The appeals court in D.C. saying the man once known as America's mayor would be suspended from working as an attorney in the city pending the outcome of his situation in New York. To Rudy Giuliani. His law license suspended in the nation's capital. I want to bring in CNN's senior political analysts, John Avalon and Kirsten Powers. So nice to see you all here tonight. I'll start with you, John, because these suspensions, as you know, are a huge blow for the former Manhattan U.S. attorney and mayor of New York. He also ran for president. I mean, you actually worked for him. So how are you looking at the situation?
Well, I think it's a tragedy when you look at the arc of his career. I mean, this is somebody who was one of the most respected prosecutors of his generation, leading the Southern District of New York, and was really revered in that office. So to have the first insult be to have the SDNY raid his house and then remove his law license in New York in a blistering document by those judges. And now, you know, Washington, D.C., it's part of a pattern. But I think it shows how far he's fallen in some very critical ways. You know, this is somebody who used to say that the law is a search for the truth. He did not engage in anything resembling a search for the truth in his defense of Donald Trump by pushing the big lie consistently in courts and other places. So, you know, you reap what you sow, and there needs to be accountability for lies in court, especially when, you know, a United States election is at stake and you call for trial by combat before an attack on our Capitol.
And by the way, he knew better, right? Kirsten, I mean, the idea here that Giuliani can somehow claim that, oh, I didn't know better. He was the SDNY U.S. attorney. He was the mayor of New York. He's somebody who's in a great deal of legal peril right now. I mean, libel lawsuits and all the like based on it. And even Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, who went to prison over the hush money payments to protect his boss. Kirsten, here's what he tweeted. He said, I warned Rudy Giuliani, everything Donald J. Trump touches dies. What do you think about that, Kirsten?
Well, I think that Rudy went into this with eyes wide open. He obviously, I mean, you listed off all of the credentials that he had in terms of understanding the law, and he still chose to lie to courts. He chose to lie to the public. He chose to lie to lawmakers, and about some pretty important things. And so I think this is an appropriate, you know, punishment for him. He frankly probably deserves more. You know, to have his license at least suspended for a period of time as this process is going on. Yeah, I mean, it's I personally never was a huge Rudy Giuliani fan, but I have to say, even setting that aside, it still is, as John is saying, a real fall for this person. You know, even if whatever critiques you would have of him as mayor, this is so far removed from that person, and he made that choice. I think he understood what he was doing.
And by the way, need not be a fan of the person. The courts are a fan of the truth, and that's what's owed to the courts, right? So when you go in there and you try to bring in the court of public opinion and you say all these things that are not honest, and you're trying to use the courts as some vehicle and mechanism of this pulpit, it ought to not work. But let's go to the idea of how the big lie, by the way, is not just something that's confined to a discussion about Rudy Giuliani, because, John, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, you know that he's finalizing his picks now for the Democratic-led January 6th investigation, and he, frankly, is likely to tap lawmakers who he thinks can defend Trump. And I wonder, is that tactic going to work, especially after Speaker Pelosi? I mean, she included Republican Liz Cheney as one of her picks. Is that enough of a counterbalance?
I don't think this is about counterbalance, right? There's no compromise with lies. The question is how many trolls he's going to try to stack the deck with, and the potential danger of blowback to fair-minded Americans watching the process. You know, at the very least, he should consider appointing at least one of the 35 Republicans who voted for the bipartisan commission, but I wouldn't expect that from Kevin McCarthy. Do they want to make this a sideshow? Well, they're going to look like the circus. You're going to have to agree on some basic facts. And if they continue to push the big lie in the context of this investigation, it will not be a good look for them. But you shouldn't expect anything less because they've embraced a complete rewriting of history today.
So, Kirsten, I mean, should Pelosi use her veto power if McCarthy goes ahead and chooses any Republican who's been complicit in the big lie?
I mean, if he ends up choosing, which I don't think that he will, but if he ended up choosing, any of these, like Marjorie Taylor Greene types, then yes, absolutely. But I think that, there should be some deference probably given to him in terms of who he appoints. She can't just say no to anybody that doesn't fit her criteria. And I think that what they're trying to do is basically, I think he's realized that just ignoring this isn't really an option because it's something that will play out in the media. And so without having people there to make the argument that he wants made, that Donald Trump wants made, it's just ceding all that ground to the Democrats. But, the way the Republicans are approaching this, we just should never normalize it. The idea that the way that they have opposed even having this investigation in the first place is highly problematic. And the fact then that in choosing people to be on this committee, he's only going to be thinking about what's good for him politically, versus if you look back at Democrats with the Benghazi committees, how they actually treated it seriously and put serious people on, like Elijah Cummings, people who could have relationship with people across the aisle and who would treat it seriously. The Republican Party just is not. They're not even trying to govern in any way, and they certainly aren't even living up to the standards that they held Democrats to.
John Avalon, Kirsten Powers, thank you.